Right now, in parts of British Columbia, Manitoba, and northwestern Ontario, the Canada Revenue Agency has confirmed that ongoing wildfires are delaying the delivery of benefit and credit checks. If you receive OAS, GIS, CPP, or any CRA-administered credit by mail rather than direct deposit, and you live anywhere near an active wildfire zone, this affects you directly, and today I'm walking through 5 specific things you need to know, including the one mistake that can turn a short mail delay into a payment that goes missing for weeks. Stay through to the end because the fifth point is the one most people get wrong, and it's the one that actually costs the most time to fix. I'm James Cardwell. For the past 11 years, I've been researching Canadian retirement programs, government policy, and the financial issues that affect seniors. I'm not here to sell you anything. This is your own money, and my only job is making sure it actually reaches you, especially when something outside anyone's control, like a wildfire, gets in the way. Nobody at Canada Post or the CRA is going to call you personally to say your specific check is delayed. You find out by watching your mailbox stay empty on the day it should have arrived. Here's exactly what we're covering. First, what the CRA has actually confirmed about these delays. Second, what is and isn't affected, because this doesn't touch everyone the same way. Third, how long you should realistically wait before treating a payment as missing rather than just late. Fourth, the specific steps to take if your check doesn't show up. And fifth, the mistake I want you to avoid, because it's the one thing that turns a 2-week delay into a 2-month one. Number 1. What the CRA has actually confirmed. The CRA has stated publicly that ongoing wildfire conditions are affecting postal service in some communities, and as a result, some Canadians who receive benefit payments by mail could experience delays receiving their checks. This isn't a rumor circulating online, it's a direct acknowledgement from the agency itself, tied specifically to the disruption wildfires are currently causing to Canada Post's ability to move mail safely through affected regions. The plain English version. This isn't a CRA processing failure. Your payment was almost certainly calculated and issued correctly, on schedule, on their end. The delay is happening after it leaves their system, somewhere in the physical delivery chain, because roads, postal outlets, or entire communities in the affected areas are dealing with evacuation orders, closures, or safety restrictions that have nothing to do with your eligibility or your file. The move. If you're in an affected region and expecting a mailed check, don't assume something is wrong with your file. Check for regional postal service alerts first, before you assume the CRA made an error. It's worth understanding why this happens at all, because it isn't a simple case of a mail truck running a day behind. Wildfire response can shut down highway routes that Canada Post relies on to move mail between sorting facilities and local outlets. It can force the temporary closure of a rural post office in an evacuation zone. In the most serious cases, it can mean an entire community is evacuated, and there's simply nobody at the delivery address to receive mail, even if a carrier could physically get there. Any one of those on its own can push a scheduled check back days or weeks. And this wildfire season, the CRA is dealing with more than one of these disruptions happening in different regions at the same time. Number 2. Direct deposit is not affected. This is the one piece of genuinely reassuring news in the middle of a warning video, and it matters enough to say clearly, if you receive your OAS, CPP, GIS, or other CRA benefits by direct deposit, none of this applies to you. Direct deposit payments continue to be issued and land in your account on their scheduled dates, completely independent of what's happening with physical mail delivery in wildfire-affected areas. The delay is specific to mailed, physical checks. The move. If you've been meaning to switch from a mailed check to direct deposit, this is exactly the kind of situation that makes the case for it. It can be set up through My Service Canada account, through CRA My account, or by calling directly, and it removes this entire category of risk permanently, not just for this wildfire season. I understand there are seniors who prefer a physical check, for reasons ranging from comfort with the process to simply not trusting online banking, and that's a completely reasonable position. But it's worth weighing that preference against exactly this kind of scenario, a delay you have zero control over, tied to something as unpredictable as where a wildfire happens to spread this particular summer. Number 3. How long is a normal delay versus an actual missing payment? This is where people get anxious too early, or not anxious early enough, and both mistakes cost time. The CRA's own guidance is to wait 5 to 10 business days after your scheduled payment date before reporting a payment is missing. Inside that window, a late check in an affected postal region is expected, not unusual, and reporting it as lost before that window closes just adds your file to a queue that isn't ready to act on it yet. The move. Mark your actual scheduled payment date, count 10 business days forward from it, and don't call in as missing before that date passes, but do call the moment it does, because waiting well past that window is exactly the mistake that stretches a short delay into a long one. This 10 business day figure isn't arbitrary. It roughly reflects how long a normal mail disruption takes to clear on its own once a route reopens or a sorting backlog gets processed. Calling in on day 2 accomplishes nothing except tying up a phone line, because there's genuinely nothing yet for an agent to investigate. The check may simply still be in transit through a slower route. But letting it drift to day 20 or day 30 before you call means you've lost 2 or 3 weeks you didn't need to lose, especially if the actual problem turns out to be that the check was returned as undeliverable rather than just running late. Number 4. What to actually do if your check still hasn't arrived after that window. Once you've genuinely passed the 10 business day mark, the CRA recommends contacting them directly rather than waiting further. Call 1-800-387-1193 for benefit and credit inquiries, or check the delivery service alerts on the Canada Post website for updates specific to your postal route or community. If your community is under an active evacuation order or your local postal outlet is closed, mention that specifically when you call, because it changes how your case gets handled. The CRA has indicated it can provide support for anyone who is unable to access a mailed check and needs immediate assistance because of the disaster conditions. The move. Have your social insurance number, your scheduled payment date, and the specific benefit name ready before you call, so the agent can pull your file quickly instead of you having to explain your entire situation from scratch while you're already dealing with a wildfire-affected community. If you or a family member has already been displaced by an evacuation order, mention that explicitly and early in the call. Agencies generally have some flexibility for disaster-affected accounts, but only if they actually know that's the situation you're calling about, rather than treating it as a routine late check inquiry. And before we get to the last point, if you're watching this from a community that's currently under an evacuation alert or order, drop a comment letting me know where. Not for any reason other than making sure the people watching this understand just how widespread these delays are getting this season. And so anyone scrolling through the comments in a similar situation knows they're not the only one dealing with it. Number 5, and this is the one I really want you to hear, because it's the mistake that turns a manageable delay into a genuinely difficult one. Do not assume a delayed check means you should stop watching for it and simply wait for next month's payment to catch you up. Missed or delayed checks do not automatically roll forward or double up the following month. If a mailed check gets lost entirely, not just delayed, but actually lost in transit because of wildfire disruption, you need to formally report it as lost so the CRA can cancel that specific check and reissue a replacement. If you just assume next month's payment will somehow cover the gap, it won't, and you can end up a full payment behind for months before anyone catches the discrepancy. Because from the CRA's side, a check that was issued and mailed looks exactly the same in their system, whether it reached you or burned up in a mail truck rerouted around an evacuation zone. The move. If 10 business days pass with nothing arriving, treat it as a lost check, not a late one, and formally report it as lost the moment that window closes. That single distinction, late versus lost, is the difference between a short wait and a payment gap that drags on. And it's the one thing I'd want every senior in an affected region to walk away from this video actually remembering. I think about Ambrose Okafor Reyes, who lives just outside a community in northern BC that was placed under an evacuation alert this summer. His September GIS check didn't show up on schedule, and for nearly 3 weeks he assumed it was simply delayed, the way the CRA's own notice suggested it might be. It wasn't until he called, past that 10-day window, that he learned the check had actually been returned to the CRA as undeliverable when his local postal outlet closed during the alert, and it needed to be formally reissued, not just waited out. Once he made that call, the replacement was processed within days. The 3 weeks he spent simply waiting were the only unnecessary part of the entire situation. Ambrose's situation resolved well, but only because he eventually made the call instead of continuing to wait it out on his own. If you or someone you know lives in a wildfire-affected community, send them this video today, not next week. A check that should have arrived by mail is worth checking on now, before a short delay quietly turns into a lost payment nobody's tracking down. And if this helped clarify what's actually going on, hit subscribe, because situations like this one show up with little warning and even less official communication. I'm James Cardewell, and I'll leave you with this. Claim what's already yours. Talk soon.